Recently, we've been focusing a lot on my own personal PC builds and what I've been building and kind of sharing you the process of kind of what I'm using at the moment. But today is a bit different because we're actually going to be checking out what you guys have been building. So I reached out on Twitter and asked you guys to send me your most epic ITX PC builds, and we did get quite the response. And I have taken a quick peek at some of these builds, and I've just got to say, you guys are absolutely nuts. Like, some of these builds are really impressive. So let's roll the intro and jump right in. So like I said, there are quite a few submissions here, way more than I ever expected. There are over 400 tweet replies to the initial tweet that I put out just 14 hours ago. So there will be some of your builds that I will miss, and the selection is going to be pretty random here. So I do apologize if I miss your build, but without further ado, let's jump in. I might make this a monthly series. If you guys are interested, let me know down below. And to give you guys an example, I mean, this is just one of the first ones that I clicked on here. You guys are mind-blowing. This is absolutely insane. This is an NK-Someone V5 custom loop, and it looks like he's got a 92mm rad at the back, and then he's using a 240mm at the bottom. But he's got a GTX 1080 Ti 8700K at 5.1 GHz, 16 gigabytes of 3600 MHz memory, 1 terabyte of storage. It looks like he's used full EK water block components here. And I've just got to say, this is a sick looking build. I think a lot of us would be very happy to have that on our desk. One thing I will say, you have opted to do hardline tubing here, which is very tricky in the NK-Someone, and maybe some of the bends could have been tidied up a little bit. Obviously, it's quite hard to work in such a small confined space like that. But if I was to give any feedback at all here, it would just to be to tidy up those bends and get that looking just a little bit cleaner. Your build definitely deserves it, in my opinion. And it looks like he's got a second build here, so he has moved from that build to something else. It's a 3900X RTX 2080 Ti build in the formed T1, so that's the case that I'm currently using. And yeah, dual AIO build, so 120mm AIO for both the 3900X and the 2080 Ti. For those that don't know, this is just a 10-liter case, and that is a ton of power to be cramming into such a small volume. So big props there. It looks like he's using the NZXT Kraken G12 bracket to kind of set up that 120mm AIO to the RTX 2080 Ti. I have done a video on that exactly specifically. I will leave that linked down below. Overall, super tidy build, and let's see what else you guys have been building. Next, we have a Dan A4 SFX build from Dan Pearson. And I've got to say, this kind of graphics card and case combo, I really don't think it gets any better than this. So he's got an i7-8700 non-K, but then he's got the GTX 1080 Ti for the win 3 version from EVGA. And I mean, just take a look at the fitment here. This is just so satisfying to look at. Cable management aside, I mean, I really don't like seeing that riser cable being squashed down there like that. I think that's the riser cable. I'm not really sure, but I mean, you've got a fan splitter here. You've got kind of an RGB strip at the bottom. Yeah, a little bit messy, and I think you could clean that up. I think that build really deserves a little bit of tidying up, but it's definitely kind of like OCD satisfying to see when the graphics card fits exactly, it fills the entire volume of a sandwich layout case like this. Otherwise, at the end of the day, I mean, you've got a sick setup here. You put the panels on the case, you can't see the cable management anyway, so I totally understand that. Great build by Dan, and yeah, props on using that big beefy graphics card in that case. All right, next one here is from Alex. This is an N-case build. He says this is his trusty workstation since he moved from his Fractal Design Node 202. He wanted something more water cooling friendly while still being able to fit on carry-on. So he's actually taking this with him, probably interstate, as a carry-on portable PC. Core components were bought a few years ago, with the case and pump res being the newest parts. He doesn't list what specific hardware he's using here, but I can give a bit of feedback because it looks like he's using a pretty beefy water-cooled kind of setup here, but it's not exactly kind of optimized, right? First thing I would suggest here is investing in a CPU water block if that is possible, because at the moment, you've got kind of two separate loops, which I'm not really a fan of. I would really recommend just hooking that CPU up to the rest of the loop. That would make your build a lot cleaner and a lot tidier, and it also removes one pump from your system. So at the moment, you've kind of got two pumps running two separate loops. You've got the Iceman pump res combo, review on that one coming quite soon when it finally arrives. But then you've also got the Corsair pump, so that could be a little bit noisy if you're sitting close to it. Maybe you don't mind, but I would personally love to see this running on that one rear pump res combo at the back. Also, not really sure what graphics card you're running here. I would have recommended a backplate, but it looks like the capacitors are kind of just chill in there. Not sure what graphics card is here. Also only using a single 8-pin connector. So I don't think this is like an RTX card or like a 1080 Ti or anything like that. Overall, cramped builds like this are always going to look a bit messy, but great job, Alex. I'm sure that build is handling whatever you're putting it through quite well. And I've got to say, there are a lot more custom loops here than I expected, especially in the end case, some Sliger cases here, but I'll tell you what, let's pick a more mid-range one, just give the mid-range builds a bit more love. So here, Rasmus. So this is more of a mid-range build in the NZXT H210i. So he's got a 6-core Ryzen 3600 RTX 2060, that's a gigabyte model, ASRock B450 Fatality motherboard, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it looks like he's also got a Kraken X52 to cool the Ryzen 3600. To be honest, I really don't think you can go wrong with a mid-range ITX setup like this. Only thing I would recommend is that I'm not sure the ASRock B450 would be my first pick. It would probably be my last pick. So not a big fan of that motherboard, but I mean, Ryzen 3600 probably not giving you any problems. So great build, Rasmus. I'm sure that one is serving you quite well. All right, let's keep this going. This is pretty interesting. So this is a ZS A4 V2. So most of you probably have never heard of this case. I've seen it a few times, but it's a Taobao case. So it's from China, from a website called Taobao. If any of you guys know how to actually get cases from Taobao kind of into Australia, please let me know, because I've been trying to figure it out. There are a few cases on there that I would love to review, and they are actually quite affordable too. So let me know down below if you know how to buy cases from that site. But overall, this is a pretty tidy setup. He's got a Ryzen 5 2600X, a Thermalright AXP90 copper CPU cooler with a Noctua NF-A9 fan swap. He's got the ASRock B450 Fatality motherboard that we just saw previously. Again, not really a big fan of that motherboard. I think it only has a single M.2 drive, and it has the weakest VRM out of all of the B450 motherboards from memory. So one pretty cool thing here is that he's actually running a GTX 1080 Ti, so a 260 watt TDP card. That's gonna run fairly toasty in a sandwich layout case, just like a RTX 2080 or 2080 Ti would as well. But to kind of combat the thermals there, he's actually running a fairly mild undervolt. He's got this running at 1775 megahertz at 900 millivolts. He says at 0.9 millivolts, which, I mean, your card's not on at that point, but he means at 0.9 volts. So if you guys want to learn about GPU undervolting, it is an incredibly effective way to just drop 510C on a GPU. It works for pretty much any modern graphics card. I've done a tutorial on it. I'll leave a link down below. But overall, another really sick compact rig. It looks like he's used custom cables here as well, just to kind of deal with cable management. Something else about this case is I've just learned is that it kind of slides out of the shell, kind of like the Thorzone case. That would make building in it quite easy. So I'm gonna try and get my hands on this case for review. Again, if you guys know how to get your hands on it, let me know down below. All right, next up, let's see what else we have here. Man, there are a lot of end case builds. We might come back to one of those. What else have we got? Okay, this one here looks pretty clean from user friendly. He's got an NZXT H200, 9900K overclocked to 5 gigahertz at 1.32 volts, RTX 2080 Founders Edition, 4400 megahertz memory at CL18, and looks like he's got a 280mm AIO at the front as well. Let's take a look at this. Ooh, that is clean. Man, those custom cables make a difference, don't they? This build, man, this makes me want to do custom cables for my own personal rig, because I'm currently just rocking the default Platinum SFX power supply cables that come with the Corsair PSU. but the color here is doing things, right? For a fairly monochrome setup here, and then you've got that nice splash of color with the cables. So great job here, man. Not gonna spend too much time on that one because, I mean, you've got your build set up. This is a sick rig. And then I scroll down just 2 builds, and then we have another NZXT H200i build. But this one is an over-the-top custom loop. Like, you guys are absolutely insane. Like, this is nuts. This build is absolutely mental. I know I've just taken a look at the specs here. He's only rocking a 6700K and an RX 580. So the specs are a bit dated, but man, look at that water cooling setup. That is such an interesting setup. Like, that is just absolutely sick. He hasn't gone into too much detail on what specific components he's using here. As you can kind of guess, there are a lot of parts here, and Twitter does have a character limit. Looks like he's using a 280mm radiator at the front, a 120mm at the rear, alpha cool water block for the GPU. But I think the highlight here is the 2 EK reservoirs mounted directly to the top of the case. This is definitely the highlight of the build. Really makes this a really interesting kind of setup to look at. He's using a single DDC pump, it looks like, to power the whole loop, which should be no problem at all. He's got that mounted on the bracket that comes with the NZXT H200. Overall, this is just an absolutely sick loop to look at. The only thing that kind of kills me looking at this is I wish the specs were a bit more beefy, right? This kind of seems a little bit overkill for an RX 580 and a 6700K. It just doesn't seem appropriate to have, you know, this big, interesting custom loop and then, yeah, rocking an RX 580. It just doesn't seem appropriate for what that is. But great job. Who was that? That was Freaku. Excellent work, man. Would love to see that updated down the road. And I know I keep saying it, but I keep scrolling and I keep seeing more Epic ITX builds. This is nuts. You guys are insane for what you guys are building. So this is a dual 1080 Ti build in the T1. Okay, I thought it was just one, but he's rocking 2 GPUs, water cooled. They're hooked up to their own loop. I mean, just think about that sheer density of GPU power. That is just absolutely insane. Obviously, 2 GPUs is kind of nonsense when it comes to gaming these days, but hopefully you're using this for something else like rendering. This would be an absolutely insane compact use case for that. What's interesting here is the use of an alpha cool 1U ES reservoir, which is actually running a DDC pump. I had no idea that you could run that in that case, but that's something that I might explore. Thank you, Imran, for sharing this build. You say you're also running a 3900X on the Wraith Stealth. There's probably one reason why you showed just this side of the build and not the other one, but man, come on, it shouldn't be too much harder to hook that 3900X to a CPU water block like it deserves if you've managed to cram 2 1080 Ti's on the other side. Overall, great build, man. This is insanely compact and insanely dense. And then directly below Imran's build, we have one from Amir. This is a really clean Dan A4 SFX setup. So he's rocking the Asus Strix B450i gaming motherboard, Ryzen 3700X 8-core CPU, 32GB of Corsair Vengeance low-profile memory. He's got 2 Sabrent 2TB M.2 drives, an RTX 2070 Founders Edition, and a 600-watt Corsair SFX power supply. And it looks like he's using some custom cables there for the power supply. I've seen these cables a couple of times and I have no idea where you guys are getting them. So if you know where to get these cables, let me know down below, because they're looking pretty sick and they look like they make cable management a lot easier here. For those that don't know, what we're looking at here is a 92mm AIO setup in the Dan A4 SFX. So that specific cooler is called the Acertec 645 LT. I've done a review and kind of built this similar setup before, and I know for a fact that cable management is one of the biggest hassles, kind of fitting that cooler into that case. But Amir makes it look super easy here. There is tons of room for cable management, tons of breathing room for your other components as well. So let's see what he's got on Imgur here. He's got his own little album. And we were right, this is a super clean build. Okay, so it looks like he's actually rocking a tempered glass side panel. So I believe this was a limited run. Obviously, you're going to compromise on the thermal performance and noise performance of your rig there. I would personally recommend and run the vented panels. You're going to have a lot better thermal performance there. But I mean, no harm to you if you want to see the interior of your rig. There is one thing I did notice, and that's the orientation of the fans. This fan here below the motherboard, I would actually recommend flipping and kind of having that pull air from the motherboard and the interior of the case downwards and at the bottom. I know it looks like there's not that much clearance at the bottom of the case for that to happen, but trust me, it is the better way to run that fan. That way you're kind of encouraging the airflow through the sides of the case, and that's going to feed both your motherboard and your graphics card. And that fan's also going to kind of accelerate the exhaust flow from your RTX 2070 Super there. So that should help with thermals a little bit. I would also recommend doing the same thing for the other fan if possible on the other side. I know it's a bit hard to do there because then you've got the fan blades facing the cables directly, and that can cause some issues. Otherwise, I mean, taking a step back, that is just an unbelievably compact rig, and it's great to see when people, do their research and use the right components, like the Acertec 645 LT. That cooler was basically made for that case. So great job, Amir. Let's move on and see what else you guys are building. But next up, we have a super clean and super aesthetic. This is just one of those builds that you just look at and it gets that OCD satisfied, right? So this is from Korsty. He's got a Pangea Green Ghost S1 Mark II. He's rocking a 9700K for the CPU and an RTX 2080 Super for the graphics card. He's using an H370N Wi-Fi motherboard, which I'm not really sure why you would choose that motherboard for the 9700K. I would much rather a nice Z390 or Z370 motherboard if possible. That way you can tune the graphics card and overclock it, no problem at all. Again though, just on the NZXT H200 build that we looked at previously, I really want to do custom cables now that you guys have kind of shown me the way here. These cables look very, very sick. I like how he's sticking to the kind of green theme of the case as well. And honestly, this color Ghost S1 is really growing on me. It's kind of like an army green. I also like how he says that he uses this PC for mostly email and light web browsing. That's got to be a little bit triggering. I know that is for me, especially when you've got an RTX 2080 Super. But Korsty, super clean rig there, man. You've got to be happy with that. This next one though is fairly wholesome. So this one's from Andrew. He says, I bought my mom a retirement gift, built her a mini ITX PC and a BMPCC 6K camera. So that's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. It's the exact one that we're using for filming right here. She's now learning how to edit videos. Her PC is a beast. Made a Twitter account just to reply to this. Man, you're a good man for doing that for your mom. That's very, very wholesome. And the rig here is definitely a beast as well. He hasn't listed all of the specs, or he's listed most of them. He's got a 12-core Ryzen 3900X, a RTX 2070 Super Mini, Gigabyte X570 Aorus motherboard, and he's got a decent amount of storage and RAM there as well. Obviously, the cable management here could use quite a bit of work. It just looks like he's just plugged everything in and just kind of left it be, which is totally okay because you've got a side mounted radiator and a side panel there. One thing I will note there is that it's very possible that those fans can kind of get caught in those cables. So I mean, a couple of zip ties that can get rid of that problem straight away. Otherwise, just really wanted to show this one because yeah, this guy's doing some good stuff here. Really hope your mum is going well with her filmmaking and video editing, man. Super clean rig there, but again, I'd recommend cleaning up those cables if you get the chance. But I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Again, I might make this a monthly series. There are so many sick builds that I'd love to take a deeper look at and kind of talk about on the channel here. So we might make this a monthly series. There is definitely the content for it. Like, there is just so many sick builds here, custom cables, custom loops, and just really well executed component selection as well. Otherwise, as always, a huge thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.